Have you ever heard 40k is won by scoring more points than your opponent? Well, today that's what we're talking about. We got to figure out how to hold objectives. This is absolutely critical to the game of Warhammer 40k, and it's something that a lot of people screw up. So I see this as something that many people out there in the interwebs are really struggling with exactly how to score primary without royally screwing themselves. So that's what we're going to solve today in today's video. I've got 7 strategies that are tried and true for getting you to maximize your primary score. This is not to be confused with the cousin to this video, which is how to deny your opponent's primary, which will be coming up in the next few days. But today we got to figure out how to safely and efficiently score primary for ourselves. Oftentimes I see a lot of people, what they do is they just throw units away, hoping that they survive to score primary, and it just doesn't work. Now, typically the easiest way to score primary is always going to be, hey, you just stand behind the ruined wall that's on top of your objective. Well, yes, but a monkey can score that way, and what we're going to talk about is what to do when it's not easy to stand behind a wall that is blocking line of sight while you're trying to hold your objective. We're trying to figure out how do we hold objectives that are either easily exposed or out in the open, things like that. So that's what we're breaking down today. And it's a little bit tricky, but let's get into it. Number 1, lone freaking operatives. All right, guys, lone operatives can be like a 12-inch lone op. It can be the 18-inch lone op. It can be multiple different ways of doing it. You've got enhancements and stratagems that can give a unit 18 inches of lone ops, regardless of how you do it. The idea is that you have to force your opponent to come far too close for comfort in order to actually get to shoot you off the objective. Or if you were going to charge, you're going to force your opponent to actually charge you off the objective. And the cool thing about this is that a lot of times these lone ops are actually very challenging to charge with skirmishing units. I've got Mephiston down here on the map right here, for example. The Lancer here, he can't shoot Mephiston, he can't get close enough. If he wanted to get close enough to shoot Mephiston, well, then he's going to be in, retaliation range of the rest of your army. So if your opponent wants to take you off of the objective, well, in that scenario, now your critical shooting unit is way too close to my army, and you don't want it there. So you're almost certainly going to lose your Lancer because you had to try to kill Mephiston. Then, on top of that, if you want to charge Mephiston, then you really can't do it with, say, a unit of Storm Boys. It just doesn't work because he's going to fight first and murder them. So lone ups have all sorts of tricks and shenanigans in order to make it much harder to deal with them than you might expect. The Lieutenant with Combi Weapon, which is your classic lone op character, well, he has a reactive move. So if you want to send Storm Boys or some other form of skirmishing unit to deal with him, he just runs away and says, "Get wrecked, nerd." If you want to, say, charge into a Calidus, well, listen, dude, you got to charge something serious into a Calidus because the Calidus has 5 attacks at strength 5, AP 4, damage 2. So she's just going to murder most skirmishing units. It's really no big deal for her to do it. So lone ups give a significant variety of struggles that cause you to when you're trying to deal with them. So if you want to deal with them, you got to get close to them, which can really screw you positionally, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So lone ups are awesome. They're highly durable. They get reactive moves by first. They're also effectively immune to indirect, and you can also combine them with this next strategy I'm about to teach to really turbocharge your objective scoring potential. So number 1, guys, lone ups rock, and they're great for holding objectives. They're great for doing secondaries, things like that. Let's talk about number 2, the rapid freaking ingress. At the end of your opponent's movement phase, you get to rapid ingress onto an objective, ideally out of line of sight. This is awesome. So if your opponent, you see where your opponent is positioned, now if you can get onto an objective but be out of line of sight, boom, you're done. This actually works really well when you combine it with lone ops because, as I have detailed here, you've got the War Dog Brigand who's looking in the center, but they didn't account for my lone ops. So now I get to rapid ingress my lone ops Sanguinor here. You can do this with a variety of different armies, whatever you have, right? You rapid ingress them onto the objective 12.2 inches away. Well, you can't shoot lone up units if you're further away than 12 inches. So now he is immune to firing, and now the objective is mine, unless your opponent somehow is going to be positioned to also make a charge into him, which in pretty much every single scenario would be at best a 9-inch charge, which is not good odds. So this is a really great way to utilize both your lone up and your rapid ingress. You combine the 2 options to give yourself primary that your opponent is not expecting. The rapid ingress works on other units as well, especially if you can really cut the lines, but it works super well with the lone ups. And it basically effectively will guarantee you primary, as your opponents typically don't want to stand out in the middle of the battlefield because that's a dangerous place to stand. All right, let's talk about number 3. Number 3 is going to be one that we're all familiar with: trash freaking units. I'm talking Gretchen. I'm talking crew. I'm talking cultists. Basically, all the units that they basically exist just to be bodies and be annoyances. These are the things that you do not care about your opponent killing. And oftentimes, due to the way that your firing lanes are going to be drawn, you get to use trash units to hold objectives and force your opponents into bad positions in order to deal with them. Kind of like in the first slide where the Lancer is going to have to get way too close to the opponent's army if it wants to shoot Mephiston. Well, because you've got like say 10 or 11 units in a unit of Gretchen, it's not like Gretchen are hard to kill. They're very easy to kill. They're very, very easy to deal with. But sometimes there's 11 bodies that can just take more than one unit of shooting at them. And if it takes more than one unit of shooting at them, sometimes you got to dedicate way more than the points cost to deal with the Gretchen than what the Gretchen are actually worth. Which therefore will mean that your opponent is now exposing a significant amount of their army to kill something that you do not care about being killed. This works for a crew, this works for cultists, all sorts of things does this work with. To a certain extent, even works for certain types of marine bodies, right? So forcing bad trades, bad commitments is always extremely gratifying in the game of 40k, and it's one of my favorite things to do to my opponent. I love saying, here's my 40-point unit. Oh, you want to dedicate 200 points of your army to kill my 40-point unit? Great, let's do it. I just love doing it, and it's an amazing feeling. So trash units are great for holding objectives, even though I wouldn't necessarily expect them to always hold the objective. They're more if your opponent doesn't take the bait, you get points. If they do take the bait, they get screwed because now they're in bad positions. So just a little caveat on that one. Now let's talk about number 4. This is the durable units. All right, these are the units that you dare your opponent to try to kill. So I'm talking Silent King when he's got -1 damage and a Feel No Pain next to a Reanimator. This dude does not die. I'm talking Satan. I'm talking your Deathwing Knights. I'm talking Mortarion. These units that are just brutally challenging to actually deal with. The Greater Unclean one with a Feel No Pain, for example. These dudes can be complete nightmares to actually kill. And in order to kill them, your opponent has to expose so much of their freaking army that if they do fail to kill you, it can just, and many times, be an auto loss. And that is a risk that I find many people are just not willing to take. So if it's going to take my entire army to guarantee I kill this Greater Unclean one with a 4 Feel No Pain, many times I might just say, screw it, you can have the objective, it's yours. But either way, there's really only going to be 3 outcomes when you put one of these hyper super durable units onto an objective. Well, one outcome is that your guy's not going to die, and you're going to score the objective, and now your opponent's in a really bad position. Okay, great, because he's totally exposed. Another outcome could be that your unit doesn't die because your opponent says, screw it, I'm just going to let you have the objective, and I'm going to go elsewhere. At which point, you're happy because you get to score the objective. And then the third outcome is that your unit does die, but your opponent had to dedicate so much to his army to kill him. Now at least your opponent's army is very well exposed. So I will say that using your durable units out in the open or in cover, whatever you're doing, hopefully you try to cut firing lanes to cut down on their line of sight. But I will say that it can be a slightly risky strategy, but it can be one that pays off tremendously. So don't be afraid to let your durable units work for you. All right, there we go. So let's go on to number 5. Number 5 is going to be assault units pushing the lines. Oftentimes, I'm going to hear the question, I've heard it in my Discord a bunch, where people go, listen, how do I hold the freaking middle? Every time I hold the middle, I die. Well, the reality is, yeah, dude, you probably just don't hold the middle. The middle, especially if it's on an exposed map where you're going to have tons of firing lanes, it's going to be easy for your opponent to charge into it. Most of the time, you don't hold the middle. Most of the time, the only times you go into the middle is, 1, if you draw area denial, so you have to send some trash out to the middle to get it. 2, if you're like trying to do a big full move block, so you deploy in the center and then use full send towards to make it so that your opponent can't leave the deployment zone, and they're primarily melee army, so then you drive up into the middle knowing that they're not going to be able to move past your screen, right? That would be a way to go into the middle. But most of the time when you're going into the middle, outside of those 2 scenarios, is really when you're making your push towards your opponent. So if they have something in the middle, you charge into it and you're setting up for charging into their deployment zone the next turn. That's when you go into the middle, when you're killing something and you're making your push into your opponent's lines. If you're not doing that, I highly recommend generally just not holding the middle, outside of perhaps that rapid ingress with the lone up or rapid ingress behind, line of sight or line of sight covering things, like I would detailed in step number 2. So that would be a way to hold the middle. But outside of that, guys, I generally don't do it unless it's my go turn and I'm freaking going. All right. That's number 5. Let's talk about number 6, sticky objectives. This is a very, very, very great way to hold objectives because it's kind of non-freaking committal. Basically, any unit that allows you to continue having control of an objective even when you have left the objective. So we're talking intercessors, cultists, neophytes, orc boys. Lots of different units in this game have this ability. Most of them require you to be controlling the objective at the end of your command phase in order to score the in order to get the sticky objective on it. There's also some strats that can allow you to do it. Some of them happen in the movement phase. They can all be worded a little bit differently, but they all have roughly the same effect. Oftentimes this unit is sacrificial as you're really just hoping you have one model survive, perhaps behind a wall, in order to give you permanent control of this objective. This is extremely useful for our assault style armies that are trying to push forward, and we don't want to be leaving units behind holding objectives. But you got to be careful with that strategy because this can easily be countered by uppy downy armies like your Grey Knights or your Hypercrypt Necrons, because they can always just teleport down onto the objective and remove your sticky control. Now this is a very powerful strategy, but it gets even more powerful when I combine it with the next strategy. But before I move on to the next strategy, let me just show you how I like to use it. This is just a little bonus thing that doesn't really have to do with this video, but it's kind of on subject. So I'm going to go to the TTS screen and I'm going to show you something really cool here, okay? This is part of what I like to call the taxi strategy. So here we go. Just clicking on the line. Boom. So what you see here is I start my game, and let's say I have these orc boys deployed on my home field objective. Well, if I go first, this objective is now sticky. So I can just say, boom, I now control this objective for the rest of the game unless my opponent, puts a model on it. Now, if I'm going against an opponent who doesn't really have, lots of deep strikes, perhaps I just go ahead and do this. So flash kits are in the truck. I let the flash kits get out of the truck and maybe they advance into the wall here. Something like this. And then what I'll do is in my first movement turn, I'll just put my boys inside the truck. So now I've used one transport for 2 different units. My objective is sticky, and now I can advance my truck. Maybe I get a good advance roll, and I can put them all the way over here. And this is going to combine really, really, really well with our next strategy. I'm going to do the PowerPoint, and then I'll come exactly back to this screen to finish my thought off for you, okay? So let me just click back to my PowerPoint. Boom, boom, boom. Just remember the place we were. All right. So we are going into activation, locks, and transports. This is the last of the 7 primary ways to hold primary objectives. And here's the general thought of it, okay? When I say activation lock, what I am referring to is you do not have the amounts of units to actually kill the amount of units that you need to kill. So if my Rhino or truck is on the point, my Marines inside are not exposed. Now, after you kill the Rhino, I'm going to get out and I'll still control the objective. So what you will have to do is you will have to have 2 to 3 to 4 units positioned to shoot into where my truck is or my Rhino is. Because you're going to have to kill the Rhino, and most of the time that's going to take 1 to 2 unit activations just to kill the Rhino. And then the unit gets out. And then it's going to take 1 to 2 unit activations to kill the unit that get out. So this is what we call the activation lock. So this works exceptionally well when you're combined with sticky units or when you have multiple units inside of a vehicle. Your opponent just might not have enough activations in order to deal with everything. So let me go back to the TTS screen real fast, and we're just going to finish this thought up for you for why this strategy just works so dang well. So basically what we did is the orc boys start on the objective, the flash kits jumped out of the trucks, the orc boys jumped into the truck advanced over to this objective. Now we're touching this objective. Let's say my opponent has a Gladiator Lancer, and he's going to go, boom, let's kill your truck. And he does. Well, what happens now? Now, my orc boys have to get out of the freaking truck. So they're going to get out, and they're all going to be in just like this. 1, 2. They're going to be around the truck like they are wanting to do. Something like this. We'll just scoot him to give myself coherency. There we go. And we'll just do something like that. All right, now the truck goes away. Press escape. Truck goes away. Oh, sorry, there's a guy caught in there. Oh, there's 2 guys caught in there. Whatever, just say they were here as well. So these guys all get out. Now you roll to see which models die. Let's say Model 1, Model 2 dies. Now, because they roll 1s when they disembark. But now, I've got OC4 on this objective. They are battle shocked currently, true, but in my command step, they'll unbattle shock naturally, and this will start stickied in the beginning of my next command phase. Not only that, but I now have a unit that's actually much closer to your enemy lines as well. So this is a fantastic way to hold primary when you're combining sticky with the transports. I also love combining lone ops with the rapid ingress like we talked about earlier. There's a lot of combinations of how to use all of these 7 strategies in concert in order to accomplish all of your freaking goals. So guys, this was my 7 strategies. Did I miss any that you use all the time? What are your favorite tools in order for gaining lots of primary? And what I desperately want to know is I need you all to stay tuned for the counter to this video, which is how to deny your opponent's primary, which in my opinion is every bit as important as scoring your own primary. Guys, this is a extremely important subject, and I hope you found value with it. If you did, hit the like, share with your friends, and let me know how I can do better for you. With that, I'm going to end it. Crump on, everyone. Bye-bye.